Bucket List Life's mission is to help you get off the treadmill, stop Groundhog Days, hack your habits, and live a regret-free life. Because we know life's way too short not to live your bucket list life. So please welcome your host, Trav Bell, the Bucket List Guy.
Hey, bucket listers, welcome to another episode of the Bucket List Life podcast. I've got such an amazing guest for us today. This is going to be such a cool and very, very inspirational conversation. Christine Handy, thanks so much for jumping on the show, Christine.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Hey, listeners and watchers, if you've never been on the Bucket List Life podcast before, never seen this before, what you can do is we're live on a bunch of social media channels right now. Whatever one you're watching on, feel free to jump on, interact, and get involved in the conversation. And so thanks a lot for playing along. Christine, so stoked that you're on the show. Whereabouts are you in the world?
I live in Miami, Florida.
Awesome.
Not a bad
awesome.
place to be.
Yeah. How's the whole lockdown situation right now? How's you're masking up, not masking up? What's the deal?
We pretty much have no lockdown anymore. We're kind of unmasked, and it's kind of a free for all. But I'm not a big fan of the mask, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Well,
I've had a lot of illness, so
it's probably the least of your worries. Yeah,
kind of.
So, have you had the jab? Have you had the jab over there?
Well, you mean the vaccine?
Yep.
No, I have some serious medical issues that my oncologist has prohibited me from getting that.
Okay.
While everybody was worried about COVID, I was in the hospital for many days, many weeks, and during COVID for completely different issues. So.
Yeah. You got bigger fish to fry,
I got bigger
which we'll get into in this conversation, which I absolutely love. Rather than me describe you, I always like to ask every guest this question. Now, because I know you're an international speaker, let's tick that one off. And the cool thing about that is we go into strange lands around the world and motivate and inspire people with our message. And but when we're coming in on the plane, you got to fill out an incoming passenger card, right? Well, for me, remember that time when we used to fly internationally, being over here in Australia, a couple of years ago. But we fill out this incoming passenger card, and on it, Christine, you've got to put your occupation. There's a little section there where you've got to put your occupation. What do you put as your occupation now, and what did you used to put on it? On that incoming passenger card?
That's a very good question. So I do a lot of different things. I am a writer. I have a best-selling book out, but I'm also a model, which is what I would have put on prior to cancer. But I'm also a student. I go to Harvard University. I'm also a humanitarian. I work for Fox News as one of their breast cancer experts, and I'm on the board of 2 nonprofits, and I'm also a motivational speaker. So I don't know that there would be space on that for me to fill.
We're talking about it.
There's more. There's literally more.
We need a whole thing for that one.
We need a paragraph. Yeah, people ask me all the time. People ask me all the time. They're like, "What's your why?" And I was like, how many hours in the day do you have? I've got a lot of whys.
What would you say? Yeah, you got to wake up with purpose, with meaning and fulfillment, and do things that really are congruent to you. What do you, out of all of that, what makes your heart sing? What's the thing that really that you love doing?
Literally what keeps me up at night is I don't have enough time in the day to serve everybody that I want to. And the people that I serve, I speak in prisons, and I speak in women's groups. I speak in so many diverse groups of people, and there's not enough time to do all of that. And so you know, the nonprofit work that I do is in conjunction with my mission and my speaking. And, you know, the social platforms that I do is in conjunction with my mission and my speaking and inspiring and giving people hope. So it's all kind of intertwined. But that's really what keeps me up at night is there are so many lives that we can affect and change with just our storytelling, and by being vulnerable in our storytelling and being honest about our storytelling, because it's really easy to say, oh, you know, I have a best-selling book out and my book's being made into a film and look at all the followers I have. But that's like the tiniest part of the story.
100%.
It's all the stuff before that that's really important. That's the stuff that matters. And so if you paint this picture of just this tiny little spot, that's not helping anybody.
Yeah. So if I said, hey, you're an Instagram influencer, that wouldn't really be describing what we do, right?
Listen, the bigger the platform, the bigger audience I have, which I want. And that's because I want to help people. But it's not about me.
No,
you know,
no.
People are like, oh, Christine Handy this. And I'm like, please, like, give me a break. It's my job to inspire, and that's my life's purpose. So
what would you say you're an expert in?
I'm an expert in a lot of two things specifically. I'm an expert in self-esteem and women's self-esteem. So, because I had a real problem with self-esteem when I was a model for 30 years, and it took a lot of illness for me to figure out how important self-esteem is. So I would say I'm an expert in that, and I'm also I would say I'm also an expert in the breast cancer space to a certain extent. So I work for Fox News as one of their breast cancer experts from the patient perspective, which is so important because you have all these doctors. You have all these doctors that have their opinions, which is important, right?
Yeah.
But you also need patients' perspectives because it's completely
100%. Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. But so when did you start modeling?
At age 11. So I'm 50, and so I still model, but I didn't model. I did not model for about 10 years because I went through breast cancer and I had no hair, and I mean I completely lost what I look like.
So you're a model, and you say you know self-esteem was whatever out of 10. It wasn't
Zero.
the best. Zero out of 10 as a model. You'd reckon that wouldn't be the case though?
That's what people's perception is. But to be honest with you, if you go into a room full of people, like at a party, and you see the most beautiful girl, and I'm not suggesting that I ever was the most beautiful girl, but you go into a party with the most beautiful girl, the model, whatever. Most people won't go up to that person because they're intimidated by that person. And so the models, like me and the people that I worked with, we didn't get the attention that people thought we got, right? People were intimidated by us. And we were lonely, and we were also being, you know, in that industry, you fail every single day. And the reason I say that is because you go on go-sees, you go meet clients, and you're constantly being criticized and critiqued, right? And so every day you have to get used to failure, and that can slice up your self-esteem after long periods of time. And I was a career model. I modeled from 11 until I was 40, and then I was diagnosed with cancer, and then I took off for about 8 years. I never thought I would model again, but I actually I re-signed about 2 years ago. But my point is that that having that identity in what I looked like for that many years, it permeated through every area of my life. And my self-esteem really suffered. And so as my self-esteem suffered, I would overcompensate by buying material items and putting kind of like my faith and my life into the society and what society,
what people think.
Yeah. I mean, I was really dependent on people's opinion of me. And I thought that would help my self-esteem, and what it did was it actually slaughtered it even more because I was building my life on sand, and I was sinking. And so once I went through cancer and I went through all these other illnesses, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have no value in this world because what I thought was my value is gone. You know, my looks were taken away.
Yeah. So this sounds like a hell of a midlife crisis that you went through. You said around 40 that that's when you were diagnosed. When specifically was that?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 41. Yeah, and that
right.
I think a midlife crisis is something a little bit that you choose. Cancer completely came out of nowhere. I have no family history of it. It was
really
absolutely crazy. So, yeah, kind of shattered my world.
No rhyme or reason for it.
Nope, I don't have any of the genes. I'm allergic to sugar. I work out every day. I have no. Yeah, it's a total mystery. So it completely came out of nowhere.
Breast cancer diagnosis. What was the initial diagnosis? What did the doctors initially say? And more importantly, obviously I've been around so many people. My best mate, has died of a brain tumor, and a big reason for why I do what I do as the bucket list guy. So I've heard so many stories, but what I'm really interested in is how individuals, because there's no set playbook on this, right? How individuals react, and what do they do as a result? Poor me, or what you've done.
Well, I mean, I think initially I was definitely a poor me, but then but then if for me to go on, and I had other illnesses other than breast cancer, so it was kind of an earthquake, so to speak.
Wow.
And so for me, I had to have purpose in this. And so I was like, well, if I try to make sense out of all this suffering, and I've had 23 non-elective surgeries in the last 10 years.
Really? Wow.
I didn't have a facelift. I mean, I've had no plastic surgery. These are all illness related surgeries. And I had 28 rounds of chemotherapy. So, I mean, we're talking about,
and that's big for someone to say in Miami too. No,
oh my God,
no plastic surgery, no facelifts. And
I wish I had plastic surgery. I wish I could surgeries like made me look better.
Oh, come on.
No joke. And so I think for me, I knew that there had to be purpose in all that pain. And so I was like, well, how can I serve other people with my story? And it turns out that being very honest and vulnerable about my story was very purposeful, because people they think they have this idea of what a model is and this idea of who I was. And I was like, okay, well, like I said, I had zero self-esteem, and they're like, really? So to go from that and to be very dependent on material items and society, to go from that to be very not self-serving at all, and just to serve other people is quite a shift.
Does that vulnerability is like, I'm going to switch from where I was to the vulnerable state more so, and living more kind of authentic, more vulnerable. Does that happen in a moment, or is it a thing, a thing that happens over time?
I went through 20.
That decision.
Yeah, I went through 28 rounds of chemo, so that's 15 months. And during that 15 months, I had a lot of time by myself to think about where my life was going to go if I survived, because that was a big question. So if I survived,
did they give you a use by date or not?
Chemotherapy often kills people, not the cancer. And I was, and there were several nights where I was not sure I was going to wake up the next morning, and I had young kids. So it's very.
How many kids? How many kids have you got?
I have 2 boys.
Oh, awesome! Yeah. How old are they?
Well, when I had cancer, they were 11 and 13, but now they're 20 and 22.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was the 15 months of really, that trauma going, okay, now what's happening and what am I going to do with this? So for me, it was a process. It did not happen overnight at all. Yeah. But I had the time to figure it out.
Yeah. And so after you went through all this chemo, and I read that you can now. What's the charity again that you're humanitarian for? It's the WIG.
Yes.
Now, what do you call that charity again? Let's give it a shout out.
It's called eBeauty, and eBeauty is a wig exchange program. And so people who go through chemotherapy and lose their hair and cannot afford a wig, we ship them a free wig. And we have
very cool.
we have partnered with L'Oreal, who gives us grant money, and Paul Mitchell salons. And Paul Mitchell salons, they wash and style the wigs for us, and then they ship them back to us, and then we ship them out to the recipient. So it's an incredible program, and we have redistributed over 50,000 wigs for women.
Really, really awesome. And did you set that up, or was that already going? And you're an ambassador for it.
I'm on the board, but a friend of mine set it up, so I'm on the board of that company. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, just what was the website again?
It's called eBeauty, like capital E, capital B, and then beauty.com.
ebeauty.com. That is absolutely awesome. What a great initiative. So after, like you go from model to best-selling author, when did the book, come about? And was it the result of you doing speaking, or was it book first, speaking second? What was it for you?
Book first, speaking second. I actually didn't go into writing the book to become a speaker, but it became very clear once my book was published that was going to be the route that I was going to take for my career. My book tour went very well. My book became a national bestseller. It's actually being made into a film. And cool. It's been a really quiet road. And so then I started to speak, and I thought to myself, wow, isn't this interesting that I was in front of a camera for 30 years? And really now my mission to serve other people is in front of a camera, but just in a different way. So it's almost like it was almost like it was preparing me to be so comfortable. Like I have no fear in front of an audience. I have no fear in front of a camera. And it's because I was a model for so many years. And so it gave me this great platform and this ability to do what I do.
So how did the book now becoming a movie, how did that all, transpire? How did that happen? Were you approached or did you pitch it somewhere? How did that happen?
I was approached about 4 years ago by an entertainment lawyer, and we had really meaningful conversations and meetings, and then that kind of fizzled out. And then I was approached by a network to do a TV series about 3 years ago. And then we got into, kind of a lengthy process, and that fizzled out. And then this gentleman from Boston who's won a couple Oscars, maybe more, he approached me and he said, my wife was gifted your book and I think it's incredible and I'd like to write the screenplay. And by the way, I charge $1 million for a screenplay, but I'm going to do it for free because I want to be part of this project.
Oh, good. What?
And he wrote the screenplay, and it's absolutely incredible. And so it's been in the process of being made into a film for about 2 years. It takes a while. Yeah. Starring
Christine Handy or
No.
So if someone was going to play you, who would you choose?
I would choose Jamie King. Jamie King is about the right age. She's about 41, I think. And so it needs to be somebody between 38 and like 41. And she's very tall and willowy and beautiful and she started off as a model. Now she's an actress. And she is a very, very good actress. And this particular role needs somebody that can be very versatile in acting. And I believe she's that person. Now, I don't have any control over that. But if she were to see this, I would be like, okay, she's the girl. I truly, she'd be my first choice.
Now I'm thinking about who would.
You know who Jamie King is?
Like, no, I don't. I'll have to Google her. Now I'm trying to think of who would I like to play me in a movie, and go with Chris Hemsworth. I mean, he seems to get votes wherever he goes. fellow Aussie. Hey, look. Your now the book is called Walk Beside Me. What's that title all about?
So I've had a lot of women, a lot of friends walk beside me during my illnesses. And to be honest with you, had they not walked beside me, I really wouldn't have had anybody to help me. And I would have quit a long time ago. And the idea for people to walk beside you, which by the way, our world doesn't portray very well. The movies and the TV shows that we watch, it doesn't portray women really standing with each other. I mean, just think about Bravo TV. Like, that's it. Bravo TV. The housewives of any show, right? And I wanted to send a different message because it was true in my life. These women stood beside me. And even after season of illness, they never left. And so that's the story that I wanted to tell because it was true. Very cool.
Very cool. And what's like, what have been your major shifts, whether it be, the real big personal major shifts since your diagnosis? That's what I want to dig into. How you perceive the world, how, family, what have been your major shifts?
I think for me, I was probably a pretty judgmental person. Very much judgmental on myself. And now I just give myself complete grace. Like I do the best I can every day and I accept who I am and I accept what I look like. But I also did a lot of comparison and I don't, not only do I not do that, but I kind of teach people not to do that because you can't compare anything. You can't compare pain. You can't compare success. Everybody comes from a different place. Everybody comes from a different platform. And really there is no ceiling for any of us. And so there's really no reason to compare. And so I think those were pretty major shifts in my life. My friendships have not changed. I really surrounded myself with, thankfully, very incredible people. My personal relationships, like within my own, like my husband and I, that shifted. And I think that's the unfortunate part of trauma after trauma. It takes a toll on marriages, which is sad. But I also got very, very close to other members of my family. So yeah, I think I've definitely made a lot of different shifts and for the better. And it's not to say that I didn't like who I was before, but I am a very different person.
Going through chemo and everything else and what a change in daily routines, diet, exercise, sleep, meditation, these sorts of things that you hear about people shifting, some quite dramatically. Was there any like habitual changes for you?
Well, for me, a little, not much, because I'm allergic to sugar. And so, and my diet was always
you're literally allergic to sugar.
Literally allergic to sugar.
Oh my God. Well, so what happens if you eat sugar?
It depends on how much, but if I have just a little bit, I'll vomit it up. But if I have more, then I'll be in the emergency room. It's actually called.
I wish I
No, I know it's actually not a bad allergy. It's not a bad allergy.
Great.
But it's actually called. It's technically called fructose intolerance. And so for me, I lived such a clean lifestyle and I worked out every day. I mean, I was a model. I had to stay in shape. And so for me, I've added different vitamins, but I always lived such a healthy life. I always said I was the healthiest, unhealthy person you would ever meet. Because people would look at me and be like, how could she have gotten cancer? That's a joke.
I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? Like you wouldn't have been breeding some sort of acidic system, blood system where cancer loves to breed. So no rhyme or reason there. So you're literally allergic to sugar, yet you still got cancer. That is freaky. So what do you eat if you are allergic to sugar? I'm just interested because I'm trying to get off sugar, and hence this smoothie right here. And so what do you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner yourself?
Well, there are
nothing to do with it. It's got nothing to do with the book. Nothing to do with public speaking.
Okay. No. There are certain fruits and vegetables that I can eat. Like people, when people think, when I talk about being allergic to sugar, they're like, "Oh, you can't have dessert." Well, there's that's true. There's most fruits and vegetables I can't eat either. Like think about it. Any vegetable that you can caramelize has a ton of sugar in it. So onions, asparagus, balsamic, any of that stuff. And if you think about it, it's like honey and syrup, any kind of syrup. But also, watermelon has a ton of sugar. Banana has 40 grams of sugar. So all of those fruits and vegetables that are really healthy for you, I cannot eat them. And so I know what I can and cannot eat, but it's taken. I became allergic to sugar when I was 35. It's taken me a long time to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So you're having dinner tonight. It's what, 7:30 or something over there right now. What are you having for dinner tonight then?
So I had a little potato cake that I bought at the grocery store, and I had a piece of chicken.
There you go.
And a kombucha. And a kombucha.
And a kombucha. All right. And what did you have for breakfast?
I had eggs. I had scrambled eggs and a piece of toast.
Okay.
Rye toast.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. All right, cool. So in terms of bread, you just have the rye. You don't have like the full-on, gluten, like normal bread.
I don't really do gluten-free. I mean, fortunately,
Complex.
I don't have to.
Yeah,
but I don't. But I also don't go for the cinnamon raisin bread. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's just personal conversation. That's. What are people saying about Walk Beside Me? What are they? You've sold a truckload of copies, and we're going to put the link up in a second. But what are people getting out of it? The top 3 things that people are getting out of the book, which will become an amazing best-selling, heavily watched movie as well now. But what are people saying? What are people saying that they're getting out of the book?
Well, it's interesting. I think that because I have more than one illness. I mean, I don't even touch on the breast cancer until page 200. I think that women who buy the book who've gone through breast cancer, they think to themselves, well, I know this because they've told me, well, if she can get through all of that while going through breast cancer, I'm good with what I'm going through. And so I think it's a very hopeful story. And I also think it's an important message, like I said, about women serving each other during illness after illness. I'm not talking about just a little time in my life. I'm talking about several years. And it's and how they served, right? Like the ways that they did. And so people love to see, like, how do you take care of somebody when they're going through illness? And there's a lot of examples in that. It's not it's not a self-help book. It's a novel. It's a story.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely love it. And just look, imagine, I know it's getting late over there, so we'll start to wrap it up. But given the success of the book and nearly to be a movie, I can't wait till that comes out. Is there book number 2 within you? I always ask that of authors.
So I wrote another book about 4 years ago, which is the continuation of this story, and I never published it. And I'm actually going to Harvard. I'm getting my master's degree in creative writing and literature. And so this summer I'm going to take that book and completely redo it and publish it in the fall. But I actually like my second book better, and I can't wait to publish it.
Are you a speaker or a writer?
I'm both.
What do you love about speaking?
I love everything about speaking. I love talking. I love inspiring people. I love helping people. I love giving people hope. I love giving people add value, right? Like I don't get up there and talk about my story like, oh, I went through this, this, and this, and this. I talk about how do you get through it? How do you how do you work on your self-esteem? I mean, like, I give value, and that's what I love. Because for me, if I had seen somebody like what I'm doing now, it would have really changed my life.
And it's also interesting that you say that you're giving tips and hints to people to walk beside other people that have got, going through, this sort of diagnosis and this sort of, treatment, because that's you and I, we can stand on stage and say, who knows people who have been diagnosed or died from cancer? Pretty much everyone.
Right. Yeah.
But it's how you deal with that, when it's within your ecosystem, how do you deal with that? And it's strained relationships. It really, there's a change of personality that goes along with it. So very, very encouraging to I've got to get the book myself, so I can't wait to get that. And your website, Christine, is, I'm tipping, this is it right here, guys. So check it out, christinehandy.com. Last question, Christine. Tell me, imagine a stadium full of people. you've probably already done this actually. And you got a big raised stage at the front, big booming microphone. What would you love to say, and who would you choose to be in the audience?
Oh, that's a good question. I would like so many different, I'd like so many different people to be there. I don't like speaking just to not like homogenous groups. I like speaking to completely different people because my message is universal. My message isn't that, that's why I speak in prisons. And the only time I've ever been hired to speak in prisons is to speak to male prisoners. I've never spoken in a women's prison. But every single speaking venue I've ever spoken in prior to speaking in prisons has been for women's events. And so, but my message translates, it's a message of hope. It's a message of survivorship. And because you can't go through what I went through and come out like I have come out without this courage and bravery. And so I get on that stage and I would talk about courage and bravery. What does it look like and how do you get there? It takes a lot of grit, it takes a lot of grit and a lot of grace, and it takes a lot of ego that you have to just completely get rid of. Like, it doesn't matter to me what people think of me, and you can't allow people to dictate who you are and what you are. And the minute we let go of that ego and that pride, our life shifts into a totally different direction, and it's very peaceful. But
very cool.
But when we're dependent on other people's opinions of us, our self-esteem gets sliced all the time. And that's not okay.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Look, Christine, I could talk to you all day, but I know it's getting late over there in Miami. Thanks so much for being on the show. How can, apart from the website, and I know all your socials are there, where do you, I'm tipping you're more of a TikToker these days. No,
I actually don't really I don't. I'm like too old. I do a lot of Instagram. I have a big audience there, and they like to be inspired. So I'm
cool. So we're Instagram. What's your handle there?
Christine Handy 1, and it's Christine Handy 1 because Christine Handy was already taken when I got on. I really want the. I got into a conversation with the guy that's got mine, like Trav Bell. I really wanted it. And I'm like, yeah. And there's this other guy in New York, just like little 18-year-old kid, and he does nothing with it. And he's got my like travbell.com or something, or travisbell.com, whatever. And I'm like, dude, you're not even doing anything with it. And he's like, so? I'm like, no, mate, come on. Anyway, I might one day. Anyway, that's a bummer. The joys of it all. Yeah. Hey, look, Christine, thanks so much for connecting. Thanks so much for inspiring. There's many people, that I certainly come across in my line of work that have had experiences with cancer, some full on, some quite shallow in comparison, but there's very few that pay it forward like you have. There's very few that really capture and compartmentalize their learnings from the experience to then inspire others. So my hat's off to you. This is what it's all about, And I think it's really courageous, and I think it's really brave that you want to pay it forward, and that now you've, that's your life's mission. We can see how passionate you are. So thanks heaps for being on the show, Christine. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bucket List Life podcast with the world's #1 bucket list expert, Trav Bell. For more great content, go to www.thebucket